Hi, my name is Sam Cusimano, and welcome to Electricity for Progress. Today we're going to be setting up Bluetooth MIDI connections with our Mac OS X computer. I'll do an example with an iOS iPhone device, and hopefully we'll be able to get my Android phone connected to Bluetooth MIDI as well. You can use these techniques to connect any Bluetooth MIDI device to your computer or device, or specifically one of the biodata sonification kits or devices you might get from me, a modified Data Garden plant wave, or a device that you might make yourself. So hopefully these instructions will make things a little bit easier for people who are just getting started with MIDI and Bluetooth. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is find the audio MIDI settings in your computer. So here we're going to connect a simple board. This is an Adafruit ESP32 feather, and this is what I use inside of my biodata sonification Wi-Fi and Bluetooth kits. I'm going to plug this in, and I have a simple program on there which is going to transmit some Bluetooth MIDI information. Okay, so what we need to do is find our audio MIDI setup here in OS X. So you can find this under your applications folder, utilities, audio MIDI setup, or you can hit the Command or Open Apple key in your space bar to get into Spotlight and type in audio MIDI setup. There's a couple different ways of getting into these tools. Once you have audio MIDI setup open, normally you're greeted just with this audio devices panel, and I've got a lot of things in my audio devices, more than you might have on your computer, depends on what your setup is. But we want to deal with our MIDI settings. So you have to go up here to Window and go into Show MIDI Studio. Now for some people the MIDI Studio might already be open when you first open up your audio MIDI settings. For a lot of people it's really hard to find the MIDI Studio. So that's how you do it underneath the Window tab. Oh, and we've been hit here with an error. Glad I got this. The MIDI server can't be opened. Audio MIDI setup couldn't open the MIDI server, blah, blah, blah. All this means is that I'm going to quit out of audio MIDI setup and open it back up again. Okay, and here we see the MIDI Studio window is open, and again you can have that from the window, audio devices or MIDI Studio. From here, we want to click onto this Bluetooth icon, right? And again, this is why it's so hard sometimes to configure your computer with something that's kind of a simple Bluetooth MIDI setup. It's convoluted sometimes to find this in the audio MIDI setup. It's a pain in the butt if you already had your device on. Here, I'm going to turn my device back on. There's a lot of pitfalls that someone can find. And now that we're in the MIDI Studio, you have to click this little tiny Bluetooth icon right here, okay? And that brings up yet another window, the Bluetooth configuration window. And in here, finally, you're going to see your Bluetooth MIDI devices. Now, usually, you're used to going into your Bluetooth settings, up here on the bar, trying to connect to a device. That's not how we connect our OS X device to Bluetooth MIDI, right? Instead of going through there, you have to go through all these steps through the MIDI Studio, click on the little Bluetooth icon, and now you'll see BioData 148. So each of my BioData boards, or really anyone running my BioData program on one of these ESP32 boards, will see a device named BioData with a string of numbers after it. And this should be different for each of the devices, so if you have multiple Bluetooth or multiple Wi-Fi ESP32 BioData devices, they'll have different names. So, point is, we see it finally. I click on it, I click Connect. Now we are connecting. Okay. Now we have the Bluetooth MIDI connection on our computer. I use a program called MIDI Monitor by S-Noise. You can find this online for free many places, and also it's linked on my website. the MIDI monitor is great because it immediately shows you your MIDI sources that are available on your computer. Bluetooth here is showing up, and now I'm getting note on and off messages from Bluetooth, really from that ESP32 board. So now we know, we can see the MIDI data is here. This is a step I always go through. You might not even care to see it in the MIDI monitor. Most people are really interested in playing music, so let's open up GarageBand. Now, I don't use GarageBand myself. I tend to use Ableton Live or other programs, but GarageBand tends to be on everyone's Mac, so it's a good way to introduce this here. So here we're in GarageBand, and I'm going to open up the keyboard collection factory template. The point is you would need to open up a project. Here, I'll open up an empty project. Let's just start from scratch. And I'm going to create a software instrument track. Let me bring over the window here. Okay. We have the classic electric piano. You probably hear it now already. I haven't put my headphones in yet. Okay. So we're receiving MIDI data into GarageBand here. It's usually fairly automatic. You can go into settings, audio MIDI settings under preferences in GarageBand, right, preferences. And here my output device, this is my device so I can record. And then my MIDI it's really automagical where the MIDI devices connect here in GarageBand. So the point is, that's how you would connect your BiodataBLE device to something like GarageBand or one of these great MIDI monitors. Just to run through real quick one more time, if you're in the audio MIDI setup, you click Window and Show the MIDI Studio. Once you're in the MIDI Studio, you have to click on this Bluetooth icon, and then here you are in all your Bluetooth settings, and you can see your BiodataBLE device or whatever Bluetooth MIDI device you have. I'm going to click Disconnect now because I don't want to be connected to my laptop anymore. Now let's switch, right? Let's try and use our iOS device to connect. So my iOS device has booted, and what we're going to try to do is connect an audio application on the iOS device to our nice little ESP32 board. I'm going to use the Animoog app. It's one of my favorite apps for iOS, for a synthesizer. There's tons of them, but it's a similar method to get into the settings and connect your Bluetooth MIDI. Again, we're not necessarily using the normal we're not using the normal Bluetooth settings on the iOS device, right? We need Bluetooth on, but we're not connecting it like a set of headphones. Instead, we're going to go here into the pages, into the setup, whatever the setup panel is, right, in that specific app. And then you'll see there's a Bluetooth button. And when we click Bluetooth, we see our BiodataBLE 148, which again is the device that we saw earlier. We can try and connect that. Once we get connected, all right, we're still not hearing anything. We still have to come back in here and now select that Bluetooth device. And now that it's selected, it's able to play the different notes on the module. Here we go. And so this is just putting out random notes on a program I have as demonstration, right? Here, let's go back in and stop that. So that's the easy way to set up on your iOS or your Mac devices. Bluetooth MIDI is sometimes something you have to dig through to find all the right settings, but once you do, it tends to work throughout your computer or your phone. The last thing I want to try and click on here is my Android device. Alright, so here we go. Let's just hit a little generic general MIDI app. So we don't have any MIDI ports selected, but what we can do is go into the settings, and again, here we can click on Bluetooth. It's now going to scan through and it sees our Biodata 138, right? Boom, there she is. And we'll connect, select it in the top here, and let's see, I'll pick a vibraphone, turn the volume up. It's probably rather quiet just here on my lapel mic coming out of my Pixel 4a. But now again, we have our Bluetooth MIDI connected. So hopefully that'll help a few of you who are trying to get your Bluetooth MIDI devices, whatever they are, configured and set up on your computer or your phone. Good luck. I know that it's not always easy, and sometimes you just have to turn everything off and turn it back on to get it to work. And I'm not kidding. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope that you have a great end of your summer. Cheers.